Hi guys, so in the past I've talked about how when Boris Johnson receives advice from Sage, he looks over his shoulder at lunatics within his own party and decides, should I take scientific advice or should I listen to the lunatics within my party? Here is one of the lunatics within Boris Johnson's party, and we're going to hear him explain why the approach the Prime Minister should take should be quote-unquote balanced. Let's hear what he had to say.
Thank you very much indeed, Sir Geoffrey, for joining us. So when Boris Johnson sets out his roadmap in the week after next...
Just I want to stop for a moment. If you look in the top left corner, you see here, UK total second doses, 530,000. Remember that number.
Sometime. What are you hoping he says?
Well, I think what he's got to really consider is the balance between keeping us locked up and the damage that that could do to...
Keeping us locked up. He automatically starts with the wrong type of terminology. It's a lockdown. People are not locked up in their homes. It's not that they're not allowed out of their homes. There are restrictions, yes. But what he's trying to do is he's, of course, trying to paint it as a picture of we're prisoners and we need to be let free.
The rest of the nation in terms of people's individual health, their mental health, possible suicides, the immense damage to business, as opposed to keeping the COVID situation under control. And I'm not sure that he's got the balance right. He's talking about letting schools go back on a phased basis at the beginning of March, which is causing teachers anxiety because they've got to keep a hybrid system of virtual and actual learning. He's talking about shops being open in April and pubs and clubs, my hospitality industries in the Cotswolds, in May. Now, that is far too long. They're absolutely pulling their hair out.
Then they should be supported. These businesses should be supported. They should remain closed until the pandemic has been dealt with, or at least until it's under control where a test, trace and isolate system can work. But it's nowhere near that.
And I think he's got to get this balance between keeping us safe from COVID, but allowing the economy to open up and start to function, our lives function as normally as possible.
But lifting lockdowns too soon didn't go so well last year. We had a second lockdown by, early November. Then after Christmas, we had another lockdown early January, and also we've had 60,000 COVID deaths since November.
Yes, but that was before we had a vaccination program.
This guy was calling for the ending of the restrictions and the lockdowns the very first time. So when Boris Johnson introduced the first lockdowns, this guy was calling for them to be ended. They were ended too soon, and it was a disaster. Then he went into a second lockdown. It was ended too soon, and then there was a disaster. And then he went into a third lockdown. And this guy is saying, yeah, we need to end this lockdown soon. He doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about the NHS. He just wants businesses to reopen. Now, maybe it's because his supporters or his donors have been putting pressure on him.
Now, we know mercifully that the first 4 cohorts are likely to be met by the 15th of February. That accounts for about 80% of all the cases that people are likely to die. So there is no reason why April, the vast bulk of the economy, shops, clubs, pubs, restaurants, shouldn't be allowed to begin to open.
Right, so
it really...
There's no reason. This guy seems to believe that as soon as people get their first jab, that means they're immune immediately. The day you get the jab, you can get back into work. And he's pushing this narrative all the time. And these yahoos that surround Boris Johnson in Parliament, these backbenchers, complete lunatics, they have, now we have this vaccine. Okay, now let's reopen the economy as soon as possible, irrespective of the amount of people that are protected and how effective the vaccine is.
Really is essential.
So you would start opening up before elderly, vulnerable people had had their second jabs, would you?
Well, they're well protected after the first jab.
They're well protected after the first jab. If they were protected after the first jab, then they wouldn't need a second jab. But they do need a second jab because they're not protected enough. It provides a certain amount of protection, but not enough for people just to get back to bloody work. This guy is insane.
The second jab will be beginning in March for a large number of people. So by April, not only should the most vulnerable, those 1 to 4 groups, have been vaccinated, but I would guess most of the 1 to 9 groups will have been vaccinated. So we will have vaccinated a very significant proportion of the vulnerable people in this country. So there is no reason why we shouldn't begin to open up the economy. And we've got...
See, this guy doesn't care about the younger people. Those people who... This is what you're hearing all the time on the right. The far right even, is that, well, a certain number of people die, and they're normally older people. So if younger people don't die, then that's a success. It's not a success. Many people are suffering. Many people have to go into hospital. This is not about older versus younger. This is about protecting the healthcare system. Because if young people get sick, they'll have to go into hospital. Doesn't mean that they're going to die, but it means that they put pressure on the healthcare system. And that's what you want to avoid.
Got to, in Parliament, vote on the extension of this regime or something to replace it on the 29th of March. And I think the Prime Minister will need to think very carefully the programme he puts in place of it, because otherwise he's likely to get a difficult time in Parliament.
But he's...
Shouldn't Boris Johnson be listening to the experts? Not this idiot. This guy represents his constituents, but Boris Johnson has to represent the country. He has to listen to the experts, the scientific experts, not some backbench MP who's tired of sitting at home, twiddling his thumbs or whatever the hell he's doing. This is not a justification to reopen the economy. We've seen before, when you reopen the economy too soon, without the proper measures in place, there's going to be another spike. And there's a real risk that if the economy is open too quickly and the number of cases go up, there's going to be new variants. It's going to mutate, and it's going to create more problems for the vaccine. So the silver bullet, the vaccine being the silver bullet, will no longer function correctly. But I don't know. I don't even know if this is true or not, because we need to look at the data, and it's still too soon to understand how effective the vaccine will be against different variants. But this guy doesn't care about that. He just wants to reopen the economy, come what may.
He's being told by people like Susan Hopkins, who was speaking on Sky News on the Learn the Lessons programme the other night, that there should be restrictions. They should last until at least all adults have been vaccinated. And I guess by vaccinated, she means 2 doses. That could be much later in the year, couldn't it? And I guess the whole point is, while we've got the vaccine programme, let's protect it and just, be very cautious about this over the next few months.
As I say, if you're too cautious, you do equally as much damage as if you unlock at a sensible time.
If you're too cautious, how can you be too cautious? If you're too cautious, you would bring the rate down to 0 or close to 0. That's being too cautious. How can you be too cautious? This guy doesn't want any caution whatsoever.
We've got to start to get this nation back to normality in a relatively soon timetable. We've got the vaccination programme. It will have vaccinated a significant proportion of the vulnerable adults in this country by April, and we really need to considering opening up the economy then.
Oh my God, this guy just wants to see the spread. This guy is working for the virus. He's pro-virus. Because the virus is like, okay, I'm not able to spread. Wouldn't it be great if some lunatic who's sitting on the backbench of in the House of Commons could stand up for me, could could work on my behalf and steps forward this idiot.
So when would you be thinking of opening bars and restaurants and gyms and so forth?
Well, if the pattern of hospital cases is the same throughout the country as it is in Gloucestershire, which has seen a significant fall in the last week or so, I can see no reason.
Why? This is the thing these people don't understand. The lockdown is working. That's the reason why you're seeing the number of new cases drop. The vaccine is helping as well. But you don't put out the fire. You don't stop the water when the fire hasn't been put out.
Why those sorts of hospitality industries shouldn't be able to open in really by Easter at the beginning of April, but certainly during the month of April. And they are really being hammered at the moment because they are industries that have very little financial backup behind them.
And why are these industries suffering? Is because the first pandemic, the first wave, wasn't dealt with correctly. It wasn't dealt with correctly because Boris Johnson didn't listen to the scientists. He listened to people like you, and you caused this. Maybe not him directly, but people like him, people who put pressure on Boris Johnson to ease the lockdown, to open the economy much sooner than it should have been opened. And then you had a second wave and then a third wave.
If they miss both Easter and the May bank holiday, they will be in serious trouble.
So opening bars and restaurants here, what about people heading off on holidays, even in this country, or certainly...
Please tell me he's going to say we need to keep the borders shut.
...abroad. What is your view of that this summer? Because that raises a different issue of people coming back from countries where vaccination is not as progressed as ours.
Exactly. I think people travelling abroad is much more tricky because they will be going to countries that haven't had the comprehensive or early vaccine programme that we have. So I take a much more realistic view of that. People going for staycations in this country, for goodness sake, our hospitality industries in places like the Cotswolds desperately need these people.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, he didn't exactly say we need to close the borders, we need to stop people from traveling abroad. That would have been a better answer. But he's just saying get people to move around the country. Maybe we could have a campaign, I don't know, eat out to help out. That would work out really well, wouldn't it? That would stop the spread of the pandemic.
People to come here, and people are getting pretty fed up, if not more than fed up, by being locked in their own homes. And it really is about time we get back to normality and allow people to go on a staycation. There's no...
I feel like I'm watching a video from 2020. This sounds like a guy from 2020 during the first wave of the pandemic saying, let's just end this thing. You know, it's going to be over soon anyway. We've learned nothing. Or this guy has learned nothing. And unfortunately, Boris Johnson is listening to these people. Now, I hope that their voices have become much quieter. In the media, they're quite loud, but I hope within Parliament, their voices have become much quieter and Boris Johnson is listening to them much less. But I'm afraid that he's still listening to some of them, and they have a significant amount of influence. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?